Hello, and welcome to Convinced Catholicism, a place for all things Catholic. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Josh Masterson of the Catholic Cartoon. Welcome to the show. If you're not familiar, he is a cartoonist in the style of, I guess you could say, the newspaper, the Sunday paper. And why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
So, hi everybody. As you said, Joshua Masterson. So I like to draw, as I'm sure you all know, and so the Catholic cartoon is something I started. We're actually coming up on the anniversary, first anniversary,
Very
for
cool.
it. So I started last April, just like kind of as like a fun thing on my own, sort of like partially as a like an inside joke that I had with my pastor and our parish and things like that. And it kind of blew up in a way, which surprised me for sure. But it's been a huge blessing. But yeah, I've been drawing all of my life, and cartoons have always been like my thing.
Thank you for that, Joshua. I mean, I think honestly, I don't know how I found your page at all, but clearly it's gotten a big following. How many followers do you have? I think you've got tens of thousands, but how many exactly do you have?
Yeah, so I'm not sure like the precise number, but it's like I've
Mhm.
got 24.9 thousand. So it's funny because it's like it's kind of like at a war right now. It's going from like 25,000 and then it drops and it goes up and it's like this whole thing. So but I'm kind of like in the mud right now, but I'm at 24.9, which like seriously, like as I said, I'm very surprised at all this. Just amazing. So
It's all due to God's grace.
absolutely.
Yeah, and honestly, I love the style. It's so original yet so inspired.
Mhm.
I feel like it's really distinct, but I feel like it also draws a lot from other works. I don't know if I'm just seeing this myself. I don't know how many of your viewers are uh, fans of other comics or other cartoons from the newspapers, but I feel like you get a lot of maybe Family Circus out of it, or maybe some Blondie out of it as well from Dagwood and Blondie. What would
Yeah.
you say is like your biggest inspiration? I mean, and I guess in turn your favorite newspaper comic because I feel like they're so uh it's so classic and so inspired yet it's so much your own as well and I really love that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. No, so like as you said, like literally like Family Circus. So Family Circus wasn't something I really like grew up on. I knew what it was.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's one of those things. It's like when you're an adult, you kind of like you enjoy that comic strip better because it's like you're looking at it from that third person, like that's what we were like as kids and things. So but my grandma, and she's the one who she's an artist too, and she always like pushed me in that cartooning way of using my gifts because originally before I'd been doing like fine arts and things like that, but the cartoon thing she always pushed me to do that. And so she's a huge Family Circus fan. So that's a big inspiration because I do a lot of like the single panels, like the circle. I've always loved that Family Circus
Absolutely.
does. And the humor is like it's just so wholesome and pure, and
Yeah.
it's just really not necessarily like a punchline or anything like that, but it's just cute, and you just kind of enjoy it. And then again, you said Blondie, and that's another thing I never really read it. I saw it in like the Sunday funnies and stuff. But from that, I always appreciated the art style. I really love the art from Blondie. Like, there's a certain amount of detail in it that I really liked, and I love the way the characters look. As you can see, like Father Otto looks, he's got some similarities to the way Dagwood looks.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I was very inspired by that. And then, of course, naturally, I like ever since I was a kid, loved like Snoopy and the Peanuts comics. So those have been big influences on me as well. So
And I totally see it. You know, you hit it out of the park when it comes to getting that style down. There's tons of comics on Instagram. There's so many, and they all look. And I think you do this too. I think you draw them on your iPad, yes, or
yeah, yeah, correct.
yeah, but they look like they're drawn on an iPad with an Apple Pencil. You look like you actually went to a studio on an angled desk and you drew the actual illustrations with actual pencil and ink and color.
Yeah,
And I think that that's really talented. And
thank
I
you.
guess, yeah, you're very welcome. And and I was going to say, too, that you get a certain sense of like one of the things that they tell you about art is that you should you should try to strive to make your character recognizable, even if it's just a silhouette. And Father Otto is, I mean, you've mentioned his nose and everything. His
Right.
silhouette is very distinct, and I think that that's very clever. And also, to a certain extent, John Henry as well is distinct in that
Yeah.
sense. So
Yeah.
clearly, this love for cartoon and comic runs in your family. You mentioned your grandmother,
Mm.
but I'm wondering, like, what made you sit down and decide, okay, I want to make the Catholic cartoon or a Catholic cartoon? How did you decide to
Mhm.
do that? And um, did you go to school for it? Are you formally trained in this in any way?
So, for that last question there, so I haven't ever been to like a school for art. Like obviously God gave me an amazing gift and knack at this.
Absolutely,
So
you did. Yeah.
since I was a kid, I've been drawing, and so my grandma, as I mentioned, so she's an artist, and she specializes in like she does painting, like oil paints. She does like impressionism, so that's kind of like those paintings you see where they look really blurry almost.
Hmm.
Um, so that was her thing. And then my dad also he did like designing and stuff. Like he would do like blueprints for houses and things like that. He was really good at art too. So I had my dad and my grandma who were able to kind of like show me ways of how to draw since I was a kid. And every once in a while, I would take like like at my church, there would be like art classes that we could go and take. Like some a guy would come, his name was Mr. West, and he would come and he would do these classes for like a huge group of kids and things, and those helped a lot too. So I never had any like official schooling though. But but yeah, I've definitely had a lot of people who've helped me get to where I am, and I'm very grateful for that. It's not the most. It's kind of an elaborate like way of origin story, I guess. It wasn't like I just like had some dream and then I just did it. It was so there's this artist, and again going back to my grandma, she's a huge fan of him. His name is Norman Rockwell.
Hmm.
I don't. Yeah, so I love his art so much. It's like it's just that one picture, and everything's like detailed and looks realistic. But it looks cartoony because of how much like character he puts into the whole thing. And it's like in that one painting, it tells a story, and you can just be looking at it for hours. And it's kind of got that like that family circus of like it's so relatable, like these day to day things. So I've always loved Norman Rockwell, and then so I was like, what if I made like like started doing Catholic versions of like Norman Rockwell? Because like, I go to like a small town parish, so northern Illinois area. And this is what, the Catholic cartoon is completely based on the parish that I go to. And I was like, there's so many like fun, quirky things that happen just at my parish that I could totally make into like, a piece of art and people would be like, oh, I totally get that. That's so relatable. Sort of like that Norman Rockwell thing. So I made I tried to do a Norman Rockwell style, so like that realistic of my pastor walking on the sidewalk because this is something I see every day, almost every day. Him walking, he's trying to get back to the rectory. This is after morning mass, and then he's just surrounded by ladies asking him questions or like giving him ideas on things that they can be doing
Yeah.
around the parish. So it's just something that I would see all the time, and it was always so funny to see. And so I wanted to make like a Norman Rockwell style of my pastor just walking surrounded by all these ladies. Uh, but I wasn't very good at capturing that style of his. But I was like, you know what? I do like doing cartoons. So I was like, what if I just made it into like a cartoon, like a little comic strip? Originally, what I wanted to do was I was like, well, I mean, I can do like saint of the day kind of things because
Yeah.
that was
You're
that.
If you go to your earliest stuff, you'll
Yeah,
see that it's kind of a more, it's still certainly the same style,
right.
but it's more of like a rough sketch type appearance. And you
Yeah,
have, I would say, somewhat obscure saints, which I really, really like. I
yeah,
really like because um, you don't often, these are saints for reasons, but you don't really ever hear of them because they might be
exactly.
buried underneath other people in the Roman calendar. And your style has definitely evolved, but it's consistent. And by the way, Norman Rockwell, for those who are watching who are not familiar, if you type in Saturday Evening Post, that
Yep.
is it's literally like flash bulbs or vignettes of American life from the mid 20th century, and really good stuff. But you were saying, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you were,
I'll-
yeah.
Um, but so yeah, it started with like that, the whole like Saint of the Day thing. Because that was something, used to be like a little tradition. We stopped doing that. Um, so I wasn't very committed to that. But I really like the idea of just doing like parish life, like my parish, making that into like a cartoon and just showing like, and people say that like it, like they tell me that like this shows like kind of like the joys of the Catholic life, you know, like I like to do I very much like to do the like the prayerful ones, and the very serious ones, but there's just something about just like that very ordinary lifestyle, of like, you know, like the daily mass and things like that, and obviously like, you know, like the parish ladies and things like these little like joys and things that I get to like share with everybody that everybody really enjoys. So that kind of started it all off, and I mean, it really is a very, I'd say like a niche, like an interesting way to share the faith. But this is just, I love cartoons. I love my faith, and so you know, combining them together, and it makes this, and it's like it's totally like a bridge. You know, it kind of like gets people in because this is something that everybody's. It doesn't matter if you're religious. Like, you know, everybody loves like the Sunday funnies and like Blondie and Peanuts and things like that. So they see the art style, and they're like, oh, what's this? And so I mean, obviously the name is like the Catholic cartoon,
Mhm.
so that it could sound a little exclusive, but like once you really like see what it is, it's not necessarily always like religion. But that, you know, I like to have that interspersed or whatever, just like throughout all the strips that I do. And some of them is just, you know, regular humor that anybody could get at all. So and a lot, and I think there was like one of my followers is, I think he said he was Muslim, and he
Oh
said he
wow.
really the comics, and I was like wow, that's amazing, that's insane. So uh so yeah, it's a really, it works amazingly as like an evangelization tool, or like vehicle. So yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That was actually 2 points I wanted to make about the cartoon. The first one, well, you already mentioned it, was that, you know, it's obviously made for Catholics, and I feel like it's really important. Well, first of all, it's relatable to us who grew up in an extremely Catholic area, right? Like, I'm from New Jersey, you know, Italian, Irish, Polish,
Yep.
all over the place. And
Oh
so
yeah.
Catholics are in abundance. I mean, that's not what I am, ironically, but um, I mean, I live in a town with, well, so many Catholic churches within like 10-15 minutes. But at the same time, if they live in a non-Catholic area but are Catholic, you almost create that community for them, which I think a lot of people appreciate. I think a lot of people are able to feel that they do belong to a great, wonderful parish with an abundance of people and activities, even if that's not necessarily the case. The other thing I will say is it's also much like our faith is timeless. You know, is Father Otto's parish a traditional Latin Mass parish, or is it a Reverend Novus Ordo, or is it somewhere in between that, or somewhere else in that liturgical preference spectrum? I really feel that someone who is a attendee of the traditional Latin Mass will say, "Oh, this is like my parish," but people who go to the Novus Ordo can also
Yep.
understand and appreciate. And it makes me wonder, you said that your parish is run by a religious order. What order is it, and is it a Latin mass?
So very good question. So it's the religious order that staffs my parish. So they're based in Chicago City. um and so they're the canons regular of St. John Cantius.
Yeah, very famous. Yep.
Yeah,
Hmm.
really awesome guys, very holy. And so they have two sister parishes. So they've got one in Springfield, and then the one in Volos. That's an hour north of Chicago, and so that's the one I'm a parishioner at. And so their charism, so they're about restoring the sacred, and so part of their charism is celebrating the traditional Latin Mass. Um, but I'm going to be honest, I'd say rarely attend the Latin Mass. I mostly go to the Novus Ordo. But the way they do the Novus Ordo, it's extremely reverent and
Hmm.
beautiful. Uh, I feel like when people say Novus Ordo, like their minds immediately go to like guitars and drums
It's a
and things.
taboo term, but it's the most
Yeah,
common one. So yeah, I know what you mean.
I don't think I've ever really like said if it were he celebrates it in Latin or if he celebrates it in Novus Ordo. Like I mean it's literally just based off of my parish. So I would say that Father Otto celebrates it in both variants. And again, that can make it more like inviting to both sides. So, people who much prefer the Latin Mass, they can see again like the similarities. And he's wearing a cassock. And like there's a more traditional like vestments and things like that. And so they'll see that and maybe like, oh, okay, that's kind of relatable to me. And then same for on the Novus Ordo side. But yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed that sometimes he might be wearing a full cassock and other times he might be wearing a clerical shirt with pants. And I feel like that's a, kind of a distinction between the two. And I think it was Father Val that was praying the more traditional, I guess you could say, Compline of, pre-Vatican II. But I think it was because it was your adversary, the devil, was one of the lines that he used where he was falling asleep. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, definitely very relatable, I would say, across the board. And that's kind of another thing. How do you determine, oh, this cartoon is just way too Catholic, or this
Mm,
cartoon is so not Catholic that it, like, not obviously you wouldn't post anything immoral,
right.
but how do you like choose the balance of like only a small circle of people understand this joke, or oh, this is funny and wholesome, but it doesn't relate to the Catholic world at all. Like, do you find trouble finding that balance, or does it come naturally?
Um, so I would say like sometimes it's a little hard. I feel like that was more like around the beginning when I was started this. When I made these, I was like, I'm not sure that some people will get these jokes or find them like relatable or whatever. But I was surprised. A lot of people were like, "Oh, I totally get this," and totally connected to what I was doing. So I'd say like the relatableness was something. It's not something I worry too much about. Um, but there are times when it's like I do feel like okay, it's been a long string of comics that are like, I mean, they're obviously like cute and funny, but I'm not really like just like sharing the faith in a certain way. So that's why I like to like just start making like some more comics that are more serious. That's what, like I said, they're kind of like intermittent. But that's one of those things where it's like sometimes I feel like I'm doing too much of one thing and I need to start doing more of another thing. So that's something of that. But I would say for me, I personally, I don't think that most of the jokes I do are that funny, honestly. I think like sometimes like I'll make myself laugh. I'm like, okay, this is pretty good. But a lot of the times I'm like, I don't know. It's just like you kind of smile at it, I guess. Like it's all right. So I would say like the joke wise, I'm not like the best at writing jokes. I feel like that's something that will like maybe come with time, like learning how to do that.
I don't think it necessarily has to be a gut busting belly laugh,
No,
every
no,
single time. And I think a lot of the time with the Sunday cartoons is it's something to talk about on Monday the next day with your friends and kind of relate to it. But
yeah.
uh, this is a good transition point, I guess you could say, to what my next question was I think that there are some where and I think you've noticed this, that sometimes there are turning points of where you definitely got more of a following, because obviously this I it came to me through like the related stuff on Instagram, right? One particular story or panel, or I guess you could say strip, was the one where Father Otto is getting his hand shaken so many times after the mass, and it's a great homily, whatever, it really moved me. And then he's in the sacristy with Deacon Bob and he's just
Yeah.
bouncing up and down from how. And I noticed that I think that that's one where that caught a lot of people's attention, because
Mm,
I think that that's a somewhat relatable one. I think that there's been at some point in someone's life where they did something commendable, and whether it was a handshake or not, they were just talking to people so much, or they had to say the same thing to different people over and over again. And I think it really resonates with people, even if they're not a priest, right? Uh,
Yeah,
that
that's
uh, it's like, okay, this is, I need to deal with five more people, and I know exactly what I'm going to say or do or whatever. And to me, I think that was something that it could, if there was ever like an archive or classic book of the Catholic cartoon, that would definitely be one of them. Would you say that that was a turning point in which people started noticing your cartoon, or what was a post on Instagram that you said, "Oh wow, like I'm getting a lot more followers now, or a lot more likes"?
Yeah. No, that one I do remember making that one. That was one of the ones that I was unsure of. I'm like,
Hmm.
people aren't gonna get this. That's what I thought. And then I posted it and everybody was like, they loved it. They thought it was hilarious. And like, because I posted that on Sunday and then I went to mass. And then I saw some people at church who follow me and they were like, this was like the best one yet. It
Yeah.
was so, so I was like, oh, okay. I mean, it's like one of those things. I mean, I'm my own worst critic a lot of the times. Um, but yeah, I see that one. I don't remember if I got like too many like follows and likes on that one. I do remember it did well, but there was one that I did, and this one I'm really glad that it did so well. But at the same time, it makes me a little salty. So it's my most liked post, and it's Father Otto. So it's like I did like the circular one, and it's Father Otto kneeling before a crucifix.
Hmm.
So that comic, like drawing that, literally took me like 10 minutes. But then there are comics that I do that take me all day, and then it gets like,
Yeah.
1,000 likes or whatever, and people are like, "Yeah, that's nice." But then that one got like 13,000 likes or something crazy like that. So that one got tons of followers, for sure. But the reason I like that one was because of like what I wrote in it. There are times where I get a little like inspiration, from the Holy Spirit. And I want to share it. Like sometimes I'll get like some ideas, but I'm like, I don't know if this is something I should just go out and share. But this is one of those things I was like, I really want to like share this with the following that I have and whoever else might stumble upon it. And so I did that. I posted that one and it did so well. And I was very glad for that because, that many people get to see it and read like the description of it. I don't think I could quote it exactly what it said. Um, but it was just kind of like on the value of us because of the cross. The cross is, our worth to God, um, along those lines. And so it did really well. And I was very glad for that. And that's something I wanted to bring up is there are times where it's like I'm looking at like I'm definitely a very prideful person for sure, and
Hmm.
so it can be hard sometimes to like look at the follower count and be like, like look how many followers I have, or oh, I'm not doing so good follower wise, or likewise, and things like that. I made a comic strip. I'm not sure when I will post it, but the message I feel like is one of those more like I'm a very scrupulous person, so I feel like this might connect with like people who are scrupulous. And I did a comic too for receiving Holy Communion. Like that was something I struggled with a lot, and sometimes still do. Is like the fear of going to Holy Communion because we're afraid of our unworthiness, like that we're in serious sin and things like that. And so that was another one that I posted, hoping to like that share that good message. Because again, for the art for that one, I don't really care for the art in that one, but it really connected with so many people, and some people were like, I really needed to hear this, and I'm like, that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to post that for, more than the likes and the follows and stuff. So
Yeah, and I guess this is my final question is, well, first of all, thank you so much for coming, but
thank you so much.
yeah, final question, is there anything you want to plug or promote, either of your work or anything else? And is just the Catholic cartoon and Instagram, or is that it?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, yeah, just please come and check out the Catholic cartoon on Instagram. I'd love for you to see what I've put out there. Let me know if you like it or not. But other than the Instagram, I haven't been too much. Like I made a website, but that's been down for months. So yeah, just come over to Instagram. I would love for you to see what I've done. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much, Joshua. And like I said, I'm a huge fan of your work. I really feel like it's very inspired, not only by the cartoon world, but also by by God as well. The Holy Spirit is definitely working through you, and I'm very blessed to, I guess, be in this in such a great, I guess you could say, outlet now in the 21st century where you could just spread God's word so easily, and I think you feel the same way. Um, yeah, we both have Patreon, so or I have a locals. I think you have a Patreon. So make sure that if you want to support us in any way, make sure that you check that out. We've got both got exclusive content on there, and yeah, thank you very much, and God bless.
Thank you so much for having me.
Mhm.
God bless.
God bless you.